Hi everyone. In this next video I'll be going over part 2 of the homework assignment number 5 for orthographic projections. By now you should already have your part 1 completed where you hand drew the 4 figures with their corresponding top views, front views, and side views on graph paper. And so for this part what we're going to do is draw them in CAD. So I'll walk you through the instruction sheet to my left of my screen. You can see here, I will post this on Blackboard. And then on my right, you can see the example CAD file. And I'll also post this on Blackboard so you can reference it while you're doing your assignment. Just make sure everything looks correct. So I'll walk you through right now. You'll start by analyzing your photo of the figures that I gave you, and then also your hand drawings that are based on those figures. And you will, by now you have determined what the top views are, the front views, and the side views are. So now you'll set up your drawing in AutoCAD file, in your AutoCAD. So what you're going to do is open up a new file, and then once you have it open, just make sure you type in units and double check that the units are set in decimal and inches. And then the next thing you want to do is type in layer and create your different layers that you'll need for this drawing. What you're going to need is 0, object, border, hidden, and dim, which stands for dimension. And then I'll show you right now in the example file what your layers should be and what their settings should look like. So you have your 0 layer that is a default when you open up a new CAD drawing. And def points is also a layer that automatically generates when you're working in AutoCAD. Sometimes it could be a default, but basically it's not going to print. It's like a hidden frozen layer. So don't worry about this one, and if you don't have it, that's fine. You don't really need it. But you're going to need 0, border, dim, grid, hidden, and object. And then these are the different settings. For all of them, they'll be continuous except for hidden. That's going to be a hidden line. And then you just make sure that you change the colors according to this example here. And then your line weights, just double check that your line weights are in inches and that they match up with this example. If your line weights aren't in inches and they're showing up as millimeters, what you can do is type in LW units, hit enter, and then a little dialog box will pop up where it says enter new value. If it's in millimeters, your value will be at 1. So what you want to do is just type in 0 and hit enter, and then that's going to change your layers into inches. So if they're in millimeters, just change that to 0, and then it will change it into inches. So you can pause the video here to see what layers you'll need and what the settings should look like. Once you have all your layers set up, what you're going to do is start off by making your border. Your whole sheet is going to be 74 inches tall by 50 wide. So you're going to make this initial rectangle on your 0 layer, and then you're going to switch to your border layer and offset it an inch, and make sure you have that on the border layer. Once you have your border set up, what you're going to do is start by dividing this sheet of paper into 6 different boxes, and these are going to be the boxes that hold your drawings for the 3 figures. So you're going to go into your grid layer and just draw a line that goes from the midpoint of the red box down to the other midpoint, and then you're going to divide vertically to make sure that each box is 24 inches. So it's going to be 24 for each box, and it should make the 3 rows with the 2 columns. So then each column should be 24, and then the row should be 24. So it'd give you a 24 by 24 box for each of the drawings. Next, what you're going to do is select 3 out of the 4 figures from that handout and from the drawings that you made. So you don't have to draw all 4. What you're going to do is just select 3, and then you're going to draw the corresponding front views, side views, and top views. And then what you're also going to do is draw an isometric view. So here in the instruction sheet, I just break it down. So you're going to draw the front view using the dimensions, or you can count the squares of your objects. But now that you've done your hand drawings, you can use those as reference on how to draw the front views as well as the top and side views. So one thing that I want you guys to include in these drawings are your projection lines, and make sure that they are on the hidden layer, because then they will come up as dashed. And that's going to be the key in order to correlate between the different drawings, just to make sure they all line up and they don't overpower the other lines. So that's why I want them to be dashed. And so just make sure they are on the hidden layer. And so these projection lines will help you to line up your top drawing, which is going to be over here, the top view. And then it's going to also help you line up your side view, which is going to be over here. So then once you do that for all three figures, each figure is going to get the three views, the front, side, and top. So that's going to be for figure 1, figure 2, and figure 3. You're going to make a corresponding isometric view for each figure. So this is an example of a different figure. It's not one from the sheet that I provided you. It's just another one. But basically this is how I want you guys to make your drawings. So your objects are going to be on the green layer, your dimensions are going to be on the corresponding dim layer, and I would also want you guys to include these dimensions here, the 24 and the 24, just to make sure that you guys made these the grid correctly. And then you don't have to include these overall dimensions here, that's why they are grayed out. I just want you to include the white dimensions. So once again, you're going to do 3 figures, and each figure is going to get basically 4 drawings. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So your front views are going to be here. Draw projection lines up, and you're going to draw your top view. And then from your front view to the right, that's going to be your side view. So you're going to draw projection lines there. Okay, and then your isometric view will be alone here, and you're going to just add some dimensions to make sure that they are correct. One other thing about the projection lines, when you're spacing out your different drawings, just make sure that you space them out evenly. So for this example, I have it at 4 units, separating the top of the front view to the top view, 4 units there. And then I also have it 4 units separating these 2 drawings here. So in order to add your dimensions, you just go up to your annotation tab in your ribbon, press on the dimensions, and then click from endpoint to endpoint and drag out a little bit. And then it will give you your dimension string there. So just make sure that each drawing is separated by 4 units, and that goes for each of these as well. And overall, you can just center this set of drawings in the middle of the box. It doesn't have to be a specific dimension. Just make sure that it's relatively centered within the 24 by 24. Same goes for the isometric. Just make sure it's roughly within the center of your 24 by 24 box. It doesn't have to be totally accurate in that aspect. Okay, so now I'll walk you through a little bit about how to draw your isometrics. It's going to be a little bit tricky because it's not straightforward as these drawings over here. All these angles that you see here are going to be either 30 degrees or 150. And the reason for that is because 180 minus 150 is 30 and vice versa. But basically the angles are going to be corresponding to those, and I'll show you how that works. So if I draw a straight line, let me go in ortho mode. A straight line here, and if I were to measure this, you would go to your annotate tab up here, and then you'll see this little dimension string under the dimensions tab. You pull down and you get angular. So once I draw that line, if I were to measure the angle between this line and this one, I would get 30. And then the same thing, like if I choose this line and this line, it gives me 150. So that's what these angles are going to be. So just make sure that when you're drawing the angles, they're either at 30 degrees or 150, depending on the side that you're going. If you're basing it off this line here, this line is going to be 30, and this way is going to be 150. So I'll just delete those for now. So all you want to do for this one is double check that your angles are either at 30 degrees or 150, and that your lines are parallel to each other or straight up and down. So if the lines are parallel, then these lines should have the same angle. They should look like they're going in the same direction and parallel to each other. If they are not parallel to each other, then that means your angles are off for some lines. So those lines should be parallel to each other, and the ones going in this direction should be parallel to each other as well. So these in this direction as well. So then having those in the same direction, having the same angles, your other lines that you'll need are the vertical ones. There are going to be no horizontal ones because isometrics are basically just using the angles, in this case 30 and 150. So then your other lines are going to be straight up and down. If they're not, then it's going to throw out the view of your isometric. So just make sure you're in ortho mode when you are drawing straight lines up and down. So if I wanted to start off drawing this shape over here based on, you can look at the handout with the 4 figures. What you can do is just start off by choosing a corner. So if I choose this corner, I already know that it's going to be 4 units this way. This is just the example, it's not the ones on the figure sheet. But I already know that it's going to be 4 units, so I'll type in 4. Hit tab, and then I'll type in my degrees, which is going to be 30. So then I have this line already. So if I move this here, it should line up there. So then the same thing you would do for the opposite side. You start back at this corner. Let's say you already know that dimension. I'm just going to type in 7 for now so you can see how it draws it. So I'm going to type in 7 units, tab, and then since it's going in the opposite direction from that point, I'm going to type in the 150 degrees. And then you see that it drew it according to that angle and then to the units as well. So I drew it a little bit further out just so that you can see it. So if when you're creating these lines, let me just show you, if you don't get this number adjusting, like the units or like the angle over here to the right of the cursor, if you don't get those and it just comes up blank and you don't see those adjusting, then that means your dynamic mode is off. So just make sure that your dynamic mode is on, and it just helps you see the units and also the angles. What you can do is hit F12 on your keyboard, or you can go to these 3 little lines here at the bottom, click on that, and scroll up to dynamic input. And just make sure it's checked, and then a little icon will appear at the bottom over here, dynamic input, and you can just toggle it on and off. So if it's off and you try to create a line, you won't see the units adjusting to the line. And if you turn it on, then you can see it. So it'll just be easier to have dynamic mode on while you're creating these lines. So one easy way to start your drawings, I would recommend starting at like the corner points for each of the objects, working your way around one of the sides, and then building upwards depending on how tall your units are. So then if you look at your figures, you're going to choose a 3, and you're going to start probably at like the corners. Maybe here would be easiest to start at for all of these objects, and then work your way across and then back up. So then remember, some of these have the dimensions on them, but if you don't, you can just count the grids. So this is 1 unit, 2 units, 3 units, and then that will just help you build your isometrics in CAD. Okay, so for your different figures, there's a circle here, and then you can see on this corner there's a fillet. So you're going to have to fillet that corner if you draw this figure. And if you draw this figure, you're going to have to draw a circle. So in order to draw a circle, let's say for example I just draw a regular circle in an isometric, it's going to look out of place because it's not at the correct angle of your actual isometric. It's not at a 30, it's not at a 50. So what we're going to have to do is create a new circle using arcs and reference lines. So I'll show you how to do that. So for this example, I'm just going to do it arbitrarily in terms of units, but it will give you the sense of how to do your circles according to the figures and the actual units and radius of the circle. But for right now, I'll just show you the trick or the tip of how to do it. So I'm just going to offset this line to the midpoint. Once again, if you have the specific coordinates of where that circle is, then you're going to do it based on that, but for right now I'm just going to offset it to the midpoint. So let's say your circle diameter has 1 unit. So let me just offset this line to 0.5 on each side. And then I'm going to offset this line. I'm just going to offset it 1 unit this way. So basically, I'm going to offset it once more, just halfway in units of increments of 0.5. Okay. So basically, I offset this line over where I want my circle to start, and then created sub-quadrants in order to give me the boundaries of where my circle wants to be. So for you guys, you're going to base your quadrant, like this quadrant, on the units of where your circle lies within your object. But for right now, mine's going to be right here in this area. So to draw the circle within these quadrants, what you're going to do is go to Arc, your Arc tool here in the Draw ribbon. Go down, and you're going to do the start and an angle. You're going to use this to give it the points from the start, and then you're going to choose the end point, and then you're going to give it the angle. So I'm going to choose this part as my start, and I'm going to make sure I'm drawing this angle first, or this part of the circle, and now I'm going to specify my end point. So I'm going to choose this as the end, and then you can see how it starts to create the angle of the radius of the circle. So right now I'm in ortho mode, so it's only giving me 90 and, you know, like specific angles like 35.5 and 180. So if I get out of ortho mode, it's going to give me a little bit more freedom, you can see here. And what you're going to do here is choose the angles, it's either going to be 60 or 120. So if you have dynamic mode on, you can see how it's adjusting here. So this angle here is going to be it's going to be 60. So I'm going to just type in 60. And then it created this part of the circle here. And you're going to do the same thing for all of these quadrants. Basically create the parts of the circle. So my start point will be here, my end point here. And if you drag over, you can see your angle changing, and this angle over here on this side, instead of being 60, it's going to be the 120. Click enter, and then what you can do is select these and mirror it, but for this example I'm just going to continue doing what I was doing. So then here it is again. Oops, sorry, got out of it. And then you can play with it here, and it shows you the angle. So if I type in 60, oops. I'm going to do that again, here, here, and 60. And then this one should be 120. So then now you should have a circle that's more in line with the angles for the isometric. So if I erase all these reference lines, that circle is now more correct. Instead of drawing like a circle here, that's not according to any angles or any reference lines. This one is more accurate. So that's how you would draw any circles that you have in that figure. So once you finish drawing your isometric for this one, just make sure that you add the dimension strings to these dimensions. But everything should be pretty straightforward when you're drawing either your isometrics or your front views, sides, or top views, because you already did them by hand except for your isometrics. But drawing them by hand just allowed you guys to understand all the sides of the object first, and then now it should be easier to draw the isometric. And then once you're done drawing each figure with the corresponding isometric views and the 3 other drawings on the left, just make sure you have these dimension strings, everything is on the correct layer, and then you're going to export to a PDF like we did for the other assignments. Just make sure it's on an 11 by 17 paper size. So then here it is on step 5 in the instruction sheet. It's going to be 11 by 17, and then you're going to select the window and basically just choose this yellow rectangle as your window for the plot. And then you're going to check the center of the plot, and then also portrait, and then fit to page. And then you're going to preview it and print it, and you're going to submit the PDF to the part 2 of the submissions link. So if you go to Blackboard and open up Blackboard under week 9, you see the part 1, which has all the materials from the part 1 and all the resources there. I created a part 2 folder. Right now it's hidden from you guys, and I'll make it available right after I post this video. And then you'll see part 1 submission, where you're going to submit your hand drawings from part 1, and make sure that it is a scanned PDF file or a JPEG. I know you guys have some issues maybe printing or scanning, so if you take a picture of it, just make sure that it is a legible JPEG. But if you have a printer, make sure it is in one of these files, a PDF or JPEG. Partly because if you do upload another file and Blackboard can't read it, then I won't be able to see it and I won't give you credit for part 1. So just make sure it's one of these 2 files. But then for part 2, you're going to submit it here, and that part has to be in a black and white PDF. It cannot be a JPEG. So just submit it here under your part 2, and then I'll be able to see it. And then like I always say, like if you have any questions regarding part 1 or part 2, then just reach out to me. Send me an email, and if you would like to meet via WebEx, we can set something up. Just let me know what works for you, and I'll let you know what works for me, and then we can use our office hours meeting link and we can meet there. So if you have any other questions, just let me know. Thanks.